I recently got a chance to watch Dianthidium, a type of pebble bee, building her nest by gluing pebbles together. Yeah, it still seems kind of like science fiction to me. This all started when I was sitting on a bench in the backyard enjoying a warm fall day here in southwestern Colorado. As I looked at the small rock ledge behind me, I saw something odd. It looked a bit like a miniature cliff dwelling. It was only about an inch long and had a vaguely cylindrical shape with a hole at one end. It looked like it was made from small stones that were glued together with a golden substance, almost like treacle. Here's a photo of the structure, along with my fingertip for scale. As I watched, a little bee, perhaps a quarter of an inch long, landed on the ledge and entered the stone dwelling. Well, that was odd. I wasn't sure exactly what I'd seen. My books and online sources suggested that this was a native bee called a pebble bee, a type of solitary bee in the genus Dianthidium. There are around 20 different species of these bees in North America. Some of them nest in pre-existing cavities, and some build freestanding nests out of stone. This whole thing pretty much blew my mind. I got my camera to take some photos. But when I came back a couple of hours later, she'd already sealed off the nest with resin. And by noon the next day, she'd built the rough tubular structure of another cell, which I'll call, originally enough, cell 2. That seemed astonishingly quick to me. It took 2 or 3 days more for her to finish the inside of this new cell, put in the pollen stores, lay her egg, and seal the chamber. And then she started working on cell 3. I started taking video of her at this point. I'd been worried that my filming would disturb her, but she didn't seem very concerned about me. She was too busy working, I would imagine. This footage is of what I call a pollen run. You can see that her belly is coated with bright orange dust. That's pollen. That's how these bees carry their pollen, in their belly hairs. She would always enter the cell head first. I think she's checking the contents, reworking the pollen mass at the back of the cell, that sort of thing. She spends a minute or two doing that, and then she'll back out of the cell, turn around, and reverse back into the cell. Then she'll pause. I think she's scraping the pollen off of her abdomen. After a minute or two, she comes out again, and then she usually takes off immediately for her next load. Here's another pollen run. This time she's gathered a purplish pollen. It's more or less the same sequence of events. Head first into the cell, work, inspect. Back out of the cell. Turn around, reverse into the cell to scrape off the pollen. Look how snug the mouth of the chamber is, how she just barely fits inside. After a couple of minutes, she's outside again, and then she flies off almost immediately. Some of her trips are bringing in resin. Here, she's carrying a newly gathered ball of resin in her mouth. I slowed this footage way down so we could see it. It took a couple of days to fill and seal cell 3. Then she started the last cell, cell 4, which she built as a second story on top of cells 1 and 2. Here she's adding more pollen to cell 4, that last cell. I've added shading and numbering to the approximate locations of the cells here. It's absolutely fascinating to see how much the nest has changed. After she sealed cell 4, I thought she'd be finished with building. But she spent an enormous amount of time working on the exterior of the nest, adding more resin, more pebbles, until it was difficult to see where the original cell boundaries had been. Here's a photograph of her reworking the nest with my finger for scale. I think she spent as much time on this phase as she did on constructing the nest cells, perhaps even more. Watching her work with the resin was fascinating. In this clip, she's just flown in with a ball of resin. I've slowed the film way down so that we can watch her working with the sticky stuff. She's wrestling and pushing the resin into place. Here, she's using her mandibles to cut through the resin lump. She leaves the part that's adhered to the nest and carries the remainder of the resin away to other spots on the nest. That red arrow marks where she deposited the new resin chunk. Now, a few minutes later, here's that same freshly deposited resin spot. She flies straight to the resin, carrying a head-sized pebble. She pushes and works the pebble against the resin until it sticks in place. After the pebble's in place, she continues over the surface of the nest, pulling the resin and the pebbles and working them more tightly. And here's that newly placed pebble. I love to see the way the rocks move under her feet, as if she's walking on crisped rice marshmallow treats. She got most of these pebbles from an area very near the nest. I'd see her fly from the nest ledge, here, down to a patch of sand and pebbles, here. This was only a few feet away from the nest, so her turnaround times on these trips was short. It seemed to take her longer to gather resin. I've read various accounts of the resin sources for various Dianthidium species. My bet would be she's using resin from the pinyon pine trees. We've been hit pretty hard by Ips beetle infestations, and there's no shortage of sap oozing out of any remaining pinyon pines. At this point, it's near the end of December 2025. That's nearly 3 months since I first started watching this nest. I just checked on it yesterday, and it's still there, waiting for spring. I hope you've enjoyed watching this vid. I had a great time making it.